Hi, and thanks for watching our video about how to conduct a meeting with the Congressional staff. We're the AOTA Federal Affairs team. I'm John Ray, this is Tim Casey, and Heather Parsons. We hope this video helps you prepare for our upcoming Hill Day. We're going to walk you through how a typical meeting on the Hill might go, how you can approach it, and how to be best prepared to advocate for OT. The first thing you always want to do in a meeting is to introduce yourself and everybody else in your group. If you want to put one person in charge to start things off, that can make it easier. And make sure each person mentions where they're from, where they practice, or where they want to practice. You never know the connections you might have with staff. Many are from the districts and the states they work for. Here's how a typical introduction might go.
Hi John, thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. My name's Heather Parsons. I'm a student at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It's very nice to meet you.
Thanks, John. We appreciate the chance to come in and talk with you today about the key issues. I'm Tim Casey from AOTA. I'm Director of Federal Affairs, and we're happy to be here for Hill Day.
Great. And keep in mind, everyone might not be familiar with our profession and what exactly OT is and what it does. Make sure to ask the staff if they're familiar with OT. And then, even if they say they are, explain in your words what OT does and how it helps people across a lifespan live life to its fullest. Use examples of how, in your experience, OT has helped someone, something you have personally seen or participated in. If you feel like you need help, don't be afraid to ask others in your group or your teachers for other examples.
One thing that you're going to have in your meeting that can help you organize yourself is this folder. There'll be one folder per meeting, not one folder per person. So make sure whoever has the folder is sitting near the staffer or the member of Congress so that they can hand sheets to them as you go through. In here, we have a few things that can help you with your introduction of the profession. One is an occupational therapy fact sheet that includes a nice comprehensive definition of OT. If you're having trouble coming up with your own, you can go ahead and have this one memorized ahead of time, but you can use this to help you develop that definition. There's also the different practice settings, because sometimes that question will come up in your meeting. Where OTs, where do they mostly practice? Where are most practitioners located? We've got that chart right there for you, as well as the educational requirements for occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants. Also on the back is the number of OTs licensed and OTs and OTAs licensed in each state, because sometimes people will ask how many practitioners are in our district. We don't have those numbers. We can't get the data to break that out, so we have it by state. Another thing that's in here is a fact sheet. This is an evidence-based fact sheet on occupational therapy and how it's a cost-effective solution for a changing health system. One of the main points we want you to get across is really that distinct and unique role of occupational therapy in helping people live functional lives, how to recover after an injury, how to live with a disability, how to live with a mental illness, how to transition from school if you're a child with a disability into independent living. These are all of the kind of things that are current goals of Congress, and if we can get across how occupational therapy plays that unique role in helping people participate in day-to-day life, that would be a success on its own. This fact sheet does go through a few places, specifically in Medicare, where we have great evidence for how we not only help people live life to its fullest, but also save the health system money in doing it. And that includes age-related decline, helping people live more healthy lives, falls prevention, Alzheimer's disease, and also chronic pain. So you can pull an example from here, but you can also give them the sheet when you're talking about the profession. Or if you don't want to use the sheet, it's in the packet for them to reference later.
Now that you've set the stage, introduce yourselves and OT, you can move on to talking about the legislative issues. Don't be intimidated. We provided you with briefing materials on each of the issues to help you familiarize yourself with them beforehand. Please make sure to review these before so you're comfortable discussing them. We've also provided talking points for a reason. These are the most important points you can make about the legislation in the meeting. Don't be afraid to use them directly. That's why they're there. I can guarantee you that the staff you're meeting with has done the same thing for his boss or her boss.
John, I wanted to start by talking about an issue that's really important to us and an issue that I think is foundational to a lot of things that Congress is trying to work on currently. Chronic care, reducing cost across Medicare. This issue is supporting rehabilitation research. Again, we think that's really foundational to what is happening on the ground in rehabilitation, and ensuring that we're picking up the most innovative and best practices possible and applying those in the field. That starts with strong research and an investment in research. And so initially we worked with Senator Kirk of Illinois to introduce the Enhancing the Stature and Visibility of Medical Rehabilitation Research at NIH Act. What that bill would do is improve the coordination of rehabilitation research across NIH. And it would do so by putting the director of the center, the National Center for Medical Rehab Research, in an influential place among the coordinating committee within NIH. It would also enhance and streamline the rehabilitation research priorities at NIH by ensuring that NCMRR revisit their research plan. Currently there's a research plan in place that's been in place for 20 years. They haven't revisited it, and one of the key goals and takeaways of this legislation is that they go ahead and revisit that, and that it also it requires them to revisit that every 5 years. And so that's a real key. We think there's enormous innovations going on across the rehab science, and we want to make sure that we're capturing that in real time in a 5-year period, and making sure that that the research and the goals that they're setting are new and fresh. It would also establish a progress report. They would have to tether the progress that they're making on the research plan and give us a progress report every year. And so we'd have an opportunity to see what kind of effort they were making in connecting to that new plan. It would also ask that the center make comments on the recommendations that were put forward in a blue ribbon panel. The blue ribbon panel was convened by the director of NIH to really take a look at how the National Center for Medical Rehabilitation Research was operating and what kind of product they were putting out for rehab science. And he convened a group of experts and stakeholders across the setting, and what they found was that the center really wasn't thriving. And so this group of experts put forward a number of recommendations, and this bill is really a product of some of those recommendations. So one of the key takeaways, again, for this bill is that the center and the director of NIH look at these the full slate of recommendations and really address how they potentially could implement those over time. And then finally, there's a definition of rehabilitation research or rehabilitation generally that we'd like to implement. The definition would be consistent with the World Health Organization's classification for rehab, and that would just provide a consistent definition across NIH that would really help better help identify the work that's being conducted. So currently we've had this introduced in the Senate in bipartisan fashion. Senator Kirk, as I mentioned, is a champion. Senator Bennett from Colorado is our Democratic champion on the Senate side. And as you know, Senator Kirk is a stroke survivor, and so this is a very personal issue that he would like to see accomplished in this Congress. On the House side, we have Congressman Langevin of Rhode Island, Democrat, and Greg Harper of Mississippi, and they are the chairs of the Disability Caucus and bring certain credentials to that issue. So the Disability Caucus has been strong supporters of this bill, and we would really love to get your support and have you take a look at this.
Tim, thanks for that. I just had a few questions about the bill. Importantly, does it cost anything? Would this cause NIH to have to shift priorities or funding away from anything else that they're doing? And what does NIH itself think about this bill?
Thanks, John. Those are all good questions. And I maybe should have brought them up during my spiel there. Cost, there is no cost. We were careful to make
Great.
sure we understand that there's difficult budget times right now, and we made sure that the pieces that we pulled from the Blue Ribbon Panel report were no-cost items. These will improve rehab research without costing the government any more money. As far as picking and choosing between research priorities at NIH, we also know that that's a politically sensitive issue, and so we were careful not to do that. This does not pick and choose. This does not shift funds within NIH. This just simply makes for a more efficient opportunity for rehab research to really thrive within NIH. And then finally, we have, as far as our interaction with NIH, we have worked closely with the center and the director to ensure that the provisions that we've put forward in this legislation are things that they could implement and that they would be okay with. And so we've had that back and forth quite a bit throughout the duration.
Great.
Yeah.
Hi, John. One other thing we wanted to talk to you about is the Occupational Therapy and Mental Health Act. Occupational therapy actually started in mental health. A lot of people don't know that this is where the profession got its roots. We really play an important role that no other profession plays in helping people function day to day. Mental illness can really cause problems in cognition and the ability to plan. And so this is where occupational therapy can come in and help people take care of themselves and really be as independent as possible, especially after a prolonged mental illness, but also if someone's first starting to experience serious depression or starting to experience psychosis. They can keep people in their daily routines because the more you get out of that routine, the worse outcomes can be. So, like most professions in mental health, there is a workforce shortage, both of occupational therapy practitioners and in mental health practitioners in general across the field. So we are trying to gain some support for increasing the occupational therapy workforce. And we have this bill. It was introduced by Representative Tonko and Representative Kelly this year in the House, and the bill would add occupational therapy to the behavioral and mental health professionals in the National Health Service Corps. So this wouldn't add us to the entire National Health Service Corps. It would only people who went into mental health would be added to the National Health Service Corps, and that would allow those OTs going into mental health to qualify for loan forgiveness if they practice in a high needs area. We don't currently have a bill in the Senate, but we are looking for people to help support introduction. We have a couple of people who've been interested, so if we can get enough of a group together, I think that we could get the bill introduced in the Senate. We also, the American Occupational Therapy Association, really supports some of the current efforts to pass comprehensive mental health legislation. So not only are we asking for support for our provision, but we really are asking your boss to help support passage of comprehensive mental health, because we think that it's something that we really need in this country. And should a bill like that pass, we'd like to see an occupational therapy workforce provision in it.
Great, thanks, Heather. I was just curious, what you think the best way forward for this bill is, and if there's support in the mental health community for this bill and occupational therapy's role.
Sure. Since there are these larger mental health bills moving in both the House and Senate, we don't see this as a bill that's going to move as a standalone, but we would like to see it added to both bills in the House and the Senate and see it in final legislation. But as you know, the best way to build that support is to get co-sponsorship. So we are looking for people to co-sponsor HR 1761 so that we can really show that support and let leadership know that this is something that has support for more than just a couple of members of Congress. As far as the rest of the mental health community, we do have a letter of support for this from the Mental Health Liaison Group. This was for the original bill that was introduced. The language is the same. The language is the same, except we've actually added some to ensure that it's budget neutral, so there's no cost to it. Also, recently, the federal government has taken several steps related to mental illness and have included occupational therapy in some new criteria. So we're seeing more support at the federal level as well for our inclusion. If you do want to know more about the role of OT in mental health than what I covered, we also have some more information in the folder for you.
Great. As you saw, the staff might have questions for you about the legislation or just about the profession in general. This is good and shows that they're interested. Answer them to the best of your ability and knowledge, but don't be afraid to say, "I don't know." When you say "I don't know," it gives you a good opportunity to find out an answer. We're happy to help you find the answer, and then you can follow up with them. It's a great way to follow up. Additionally, don't feel discouraged if you don't get any questions. Sometimes that's just the staffer's style, or they can be really busy and preoccupied with other things. Make sure you finish the meeting by thanking the staff for their time and finding out if they have any other questions. Also, make sure to take their card so you have their contact information. That way you can follow up with them in a few days and answer any questions that they might have had that you might not be able to answer. Remember, staff covers a lot of issues, not just healthcare. A follow-up email can be a good way to remind them to pay attention to ours.
John, thanks for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We just appreciated your time and look forward to staying in touch with you. Thanks
Sure.
a lot. Let me give you my card before I leave.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, John. And
Sure.
what's the best way to follow up with you?
We can grab one of my cards on the way out in the front office, and then just shoot me an email. It's probably best, and
Okay,
I'm
great.
happy to get back to you when I get a chance.
Sure, and if your boss or your boss are ever in the district, we'd love to have you over to the program and see some of the work we're doing there. So always think of us as a resource.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We hope this video is helpful. Keep in mind, you are the experts. You're talking about your profession, occupational therapy, to people that might not know that much about it. This is your chance to talk about why your career and the profession is important, and ultimately, what Congress can do to allow you to practice at the highest level. Keep in mind, members of Congress and their staff are here to represent you, their constituents. Make sure you take advantage of this opportunity to be heard.